Okay, let's talk about diagrams in geometry. And to do that, we're first going to talk about just regular old diagrams. Let's say you have the following problem. It says Fred lives 10 miles away from the library. And let's say you wanted to make a diagram of this question, of the beginning of this question. You might draw a picture of Fred's house. I'll call that F. And you might say, here's the library. And I'll call that L. And then you might just say that from here to here is 10 miles. This is a perfectly fine diagram. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not weird. If I showed you this diagram, you'd say, yeah, that diagram is fine. But let me ask you this. Is this diagram even close to scale? Well, not really. The distance from here, this point, to this point is 10 miles, and we're saying that this distance, if this was a to scale drawing, if this drawing was to scale, it would mean that Fred's house was about 2 miles high, which is, of course, absurd. We recognize that in math diagrams, the diagram does not have to look like the thing it represents. How do you know this distance here is 10 miles? Because it says it's 10 miles. That's all. If I'd written 110 miles, you'd know it's 110 miles. Again, it's just because that's what I wrote. It's not because I measured it. It's not because of any deep meaning. It's because I wrote that it's 10 miles or 110 miles. So that's how you know. And in geometry, it works the same way. Let's say I have this triangle. This is a diagram. This triangle drawing is going to be a diagram of a triangle. Let's say I say that this angle is 50 degrees. Why is it 50 degrees? Because I say it is, because I wrote that it's 50 degrees. Not because it's actually measured to 50 degrees. It's not because I took a protractor and said, yeah, this is 50 degrees. It's 50 degrees simply because I wrote 50 degrees on it. If I write that this angle here is also 50 degrees, then that means that this angle is 50 degrees. Even though you can see that they're not really the same size, if I label them as 50 degrees, it means for the entire geometry problem, for that problem, we're going to call this 50 degrees. Now, that said, it's usually smart, if you're going to draw an angle, it's probably smart to make it reasonably close. So I might say that this angle is 110 degrees. That's fine. And technically, you can draw a very small angle, label this as 110 degrees. And it's mathematically okay, but it's just weird. Like, why torture yourself? When you're doing a geometry proof, all that really matters is what's written, what's labeled on the diagram. That said, try to make your diagrams at least reasonable. Don't try to fool yourself with a diagram.